Trump has been saying the elections have been meddled with since he first ran for president. While he and his followers stopped making those accusations once he was declared the winner, I think that his accusations deserve some serious consideration, and I want to see whether or not they might be accurate, because I think it's important to listen to everybody with an open mind, including Trump. And so I evaluated the evidence about the election and whether or not it was meddled by both in the direction of both the Harris camp and the Trump camp. I would say if Trump was meddling with this election, it's very possible that he actually thought Harris was meddling, and so he decided to meddle with the election just to even things out, if you will. Now, that's not an uncommon perspective. In fact, I haven't seen surveys on this, but I went to an event on revenge, and the vast majority of people thought revenge was actually a good thing. I don't think it is a good thing. I think that it's better to, let things fall where they may and to sort of separate yourself from people who are causing harm, and just warn them that they're doing it before you do it. But the idea that Trump would be getting even at the Democrats for meddling with the elections from his perspective is, I think, very realistic, but I believe it's a misunderstanding based on my research. Either way, I think we should evaluate the evidence based on its merits. So I had this Reddit article that sort of led me to create the research into this situation, and I will touch on that a little bit, but most of the research is other stuff. So first, I want to talk a little bit about projection. So for those that don't know what projection is, it's that when you have an internal belief or feeling or understanding and you project that on other people. So if you're really angry, you might say other people are really angry. And so I want to give examples of Trump and times that he's projected, and there are quite a few of them. I'm just going to pick five or six. One is that he accused the US of having a deep state that opposed him. Now, after that, he got elected. What he did is, and this is right in line with Project 2025, he installed loyalists to Trump that were not loyal to democracy, they were loyal to Trump. And you've noticed that when someone disagrees with Trump, even if they're part of his inner circle, if they disagree with him, they get ousted and he tries to destroy their lives, basically. So Trump tries to make a big disincentive and he wants loyalists around him. A Facebook friend that is a person I really respect recently had a post that said that weak leaders surround themselves with yes men. Strong leaders surround themselves with people who disagree with them because that's what helps you see the diverse perspectives that you might otherwise be blinded to. And that's why I think it's really important that we have the perspective of conservatives tonight because what I'm going to put out there is more liberal aligning, but I want to hear the perspective of what's not. And I want to understand if there are flaws in what I'm presenting. So, that said, um, so Trump accused Biden of enriching his family via Hunter Biden's business dealings. I looked that up. I fact checked that. There's actually no evidence that Biden gave any political favors to anyone on Hunter's behalf, although Hunter was trying to sell his influence. Hunter's a piece of work, right? Difficult son to have. I feel bad that, Hunter has as many misunderstandings as he does, and I think it would have been hard to be the son of a person that had such political influence. But for what it's worth, it doesn't seem like Biden did do that. Whereas Trump's children, Ivanka and Jared Kushner, actually held White House positions and earned hundreds of millions of dollars during his presidency. Trump properties also received taxpayer money and money from foreign governments while he was in office, raising conflict of interest concerns and violating the emoluments clause. So the next thing is that Trump accused Biden of weaponizing the Department of Justice to get law enforcement to go after him. Well, actually, we now know that at least in one of the cases that was being done, Trump was actually guilty of felonies. So that's not weaponizing the justice system. It's following the course of action of holding a public figure responsible for crimes. Now, the projection is when Trump repeatedly tried to persuade the Department of Justice and FBI to investigate Hillary Clinton, James Comey, Barack Obama, and others, and he demanded loyalty from the Department of Justice officials and fired anyone who did not swear loyalty to him. So that's a pretty big stick to be using in terms of weaponizing the system for someone who claims that Biden weaponized the justice system. And I would be curious to hear from conservatives whether or not there are any examples of Biden doing things like what I just said Trump did. Next is about business failures. Trump accused other companies and individuals of being losers or failures and mocking bankruptcies, whereas Trump has actually declared bankruptcy 6 times. The Trump Organization was recently found guilty of criminal tax fraud. His True Social platform lost over $70 million in its first year, and the only reason it's even solvent is because of Trump's brand name, which somehow is valuable. Um, Now, mental fitness and cognition. Trump accused Joe Biden of being mentally unfit and cognitively impaired. In fact, that's been said so many times that I know a lot of liberals who think it's true too. I watched a bunch of videos of, where Biden was supposedly mentally unfit, and it was little bits and pieces where he had gaffes. Biden always had like a what's it called? A stammer, like and so he has also been that guy that even ever since he was Obama's vice president, he puts his foot in his mouth. He really does. He's the guy that says the things you should never say out loud. Like, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black, right? Like he said that out loud. Like you should never say something like that. That's completely inappropriate. And any politician should never say that. Not even like a mayor of a town should say that, let alone the president of the United States. So all I would say is I don't think Joe Biden was mentally unfit, but if you look at Trump, he mixes up names of events and people, he slurs his speech, he's confused about major historical facts in public remarks. His own staff, John Kelly and Rex Tillerson, have questioned his mental acuity. So even his loyalists, people that were within his loyalist crowd, have questioned whether or not he's mentally fit. Of course, his doctor says that he is. Now, that's another story, but his doctor would, of course, be fired if he said anything else, right? So we know that. Spreading disinformation. Trump says that mainstream media and Democrats poured around fake news and misinformation. Actually, Trump was the leading source of COVID misinformation and made over 30,000 false or misleading claims during his presidency, per the Washington Post fact checker, and he continues to push discredited conspiracy theories. Um, so disrespecting the military, Trump says that Biden and Democrats do not respect the military. Now, this is probably one of the biggest ones. Um, so Trump reportedly called fallen soldiers suckers and losers. He attacked Gold Star families, avoided service himself via dubious medical deferments, which I did look into and did not seem valid, by the way. He's claimed that he had bone spurs, but I believe that he claimed he had bone spurs only after his other temporary relief of not getting the not going getting drafted into the Vietnam War didn't work anymore, and so his bone spurs sort of magically appeared. And even his own doctor, I believe, if I recall the research correctly, his own doctor was saying that it wasn't true. He got paid to say that. So he disparaged John McCain for being a POW. He said he's not a war hero. He's not a war hero because he was captured. I like people who weren't captured. John McCain, by the way, was awarded 14 medals, some medals multiple times, but he was awarded 14 medals, including the third highest medal in the military, the Silver Star. Trump, on the other hand, almost definitely didn't have bone spurs when he avoided the draft in Vietnam. So the last one, election interference, tonight's topic. He said that the 2020 election was rigged and the Democrats were stealing the election. He tried to overturn the election by telling Georgia to find the votes and supported fake electors submitting fraudulent documents, basically trying to rig the election himself. So we already know with, absolutely documented facts and testimony and lawsuits that Trump tried to rig the election in 2020. Why would we think when he did that he didn't try to rig the election in 2016 and that he didn't try to rig the election in 2024? Now, Trump alone is not the only one that was trying to rig the election. And again, I said Trump is just one guy and I don't think, a stable genius. He's having trouble getting by a lot of the time. Although, give me, he's got a lot of energy, but he has a lot of trouble forming coherent sentences. So, he is not doing this alone. He had an ally of Elon Musk who has great technical capabilities and knowledge and would make his ability to meddle quite strong. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that later in the presentation. But for now, let's talk about foreign government meddling because there was definitely foreign governments that meddled in this election. So first, our favorite, Russia. So the Atlantic Council, which is right center and highly factual in reporting, um, basically said that just one lawsuit showed $10 million of Russian money used to buy political influencers supporting Donald Trump. The influencers apparently didn't even know that they were getting paid by Russia, but they were. And so Russia, we know just one instance that became public was $10 million. Of course, there were more. There's a lot of black Russian money, dark Russian money going around. So there were Russian actors trying to shut down polling places with fake bomb threats on the day of the election. There was also something called the Doppelganger Network, which basically made copycats of prominent news sites and tried to make it look like the Washington Post, Fox News, etc., which actually had Russian propaganda. So people thought the Russian propaganda was actually coming from their trusted news sources. Interestingly, the source I said was trying to claim that the government did a good job shutting down the sites, but guess what? They shut down the sites, and then the next day, Russia had another copycat of the sites right back up again. So there was really no cohesively skilled response from the US government about these doppelganger sites. Long story short, tens of thousands of fake stories were shared with who knows how many impressions because we didn't have access to that data. So what they didn't mention is that since they're a conservative source, that Russia's key interference was by far the largest at trying to meddle with the election outcomes out of the three different countries that meddled with the elections, and that their focus was to support Donald Trump and hurt Joe Biden. And I have sources for all this, as usual, in the slides. So I'll share the slides at the end. Actually, maybe I can share them now. I hope. I don't know. I don't know if they'll be accessible, but if they're not, I'll share them once you request. So next, China. So China wasn't really supporting either Donald Trump or Harris. All China wanted to do is erode trust in the U.S. elections. And um, I hate to help them, but I actually do have some concerns about the U.S. election process, and I'll go into that later. China really aimed to amplify social divisions rather than target a specific candidate. But I will say that amplifying social divisions is really what Trump bases all of his support on. He's always trying to divide us. And I will say Democrats are often trying to divide us as well, trying to, call Trump supporters like bad names and stuff like that. Even if Trump supporters are wrong, and I personally think they're wrong about a lot of stuff, it's because of a misunderstanding, not because they're bad people. I have a lot of friends that are Trump supporters. They're very nice people. I think they have some misunderstandings, but we can at least chat about things politely. And I think it's really important that we all be able to chat with people in our circles that are Trump supporters about things like this in a polite and friendly way. And, eventually, like, at the end of the day, like we're each going to cast our votes where we may. So the conversation should be about understanding the other person's perspective, not about telling them why they're wrong and we're right. So, China's main goal, by the way, was to campaign support or really to bring down any candidates that were anti-China. So China was mostly focused on bringing down any anti-China candidates. Um, so Iran meddled with and by the way, that probably was more frequent in the Trump camp. So I'm going to give China like an even keeled, support for Trump because of divisiveness and support for like by opposing politicians that are against China. That was probably mostly Republican. So I'm going to give them like a 50-50 even split just as a guess. Now, Iran did meddle with the elections. They were a much smaller player than Russia and China, as you might guess. Iran is a smaller country with much smaller resources. But they did try to hack both Biden and Trump's inner circle. They only succeeded in hacking Trump's inner circle, and they leaked the information. Now, if any of this material got out, I did not see it. So it must have been a much smaller impact. And when I researched said that it was a much smaller impact, they basically also tried to stoke issues about LGBTQ because they're very anti-LGBTQ rights. In fact, being gay in Iran carries the death penalty. So they are very anti-LGBTQ, and Trump is, obviously anti-LGBTQ. So, and he campaigned on that a lot. Um, So I'm going to give this one while they were intending to probably hack both parties, and I think that they really did have more of a preference for a Harris administration than a Trump administration. I think because of their LGBTQ bias, the chances are good they supported both candidates to a roughly equal level. So those are the domestic things. Now. I want to thank Blake for my next slide because Blake basically was pointing out that the media has really been influencing the elections, and I agree with him. We just disagree about the way that the media has been interfering with elections. Blake actually thought the liberal media was the one being dishonest, whereas I have fact-checked left and right and center media, and what I found is that the left doesn't share facts that favor the right. The right doesn't share facts that favor the left. The center won't share any facts that make it seem like it's agreed with in alignment with the left or the right. So they'll omit stuff as well. You can't get the full truth from the center either. But the right also makes stuff up, and they make stuff up that feeds the confirmation bias of their audience. So you have to be really clear when something really upsets you from right-wing media. Look for an independent source that agrees with it. There's a lot of emotionally charged things that I see in right-wing news. The one that I've checked the most is Fox News, and we already know they lost a lawsuit for the Dominion court case. And so they not only knowingly lied, they testified in front of Congress that they are not a news network, they're just an entertainment network because they didn't want to be held accountable to the standards that a news network would be accountable to. But they still lost that suit and lost hundreds of millions of dollars. Um, so, certain domestic media outlets frequently engage in deceptive practices and do it to bolster Donald Trump at the expense of factual accuracy. So, they amplify baseless claims like unsubstantiated allegations regarding election fraud against Donald Trump without any credible evidence. I'm going to try to present some um, uh, allegations of fraud that actually do have some credible evidence tonight. They also create echo chambers. They basically align with, they only feature voices that are pro-Trump. And so they're isolating people from viewpoints other than their own, which is exactly the opposite of what we try to do in the FTI, where we want diverse viewpoints. We want to welcome conservatives and liberals because at the end of the day, that's how we learn the most is by hearing from the people that we disagree with. And only by listening to them with an open mind can we figure out where we have misunderstandings. Next is that they discredit opponents. They launch sustained campaigns to smear political adversaries, and they basically distort and misinform people. And next, they spread conspiracy theories. They disseminate normalized fringe conspiracy theories, undermining trust in democratic institutions and public discourse. So, um, sorry to read the slide, but I put that one together last minute. So, um, next, Elon Musk's influence. So, Musk donated at least $250 million dollars to Trump's 2024 campaign. That's a lot of money, $250 million dollars. It's a quarter of $1 trillion. So, um, he disseminated information and misinformation. A significant percentage of Musk's posts on X regarding election security contained misleading or false statements and amplified that content. His AI chatbot Grok was also reported to spread false election information. America PAC, voter data collection, was basically funded by Musk because America PAC was essentially a Musk PAC. And they spent money on ads designed to collect voter data, sometimes on false premises, like being deceptive. And then sometimes some states' officials were investigating whether or not it violated state law. There was also an advisory role given to Musk, as we all know, and the Department of Government Efficiency. Because the way to make government more efficient is to create another branch of government, right? Or not another branch of government, but another government organization. Except somehow that makes sense to them. So it would have made sense if he actually found large scale cases of, bear with me just one second, I just need to close the door. It would have made sense if they had found large scale cases of government fraud, but they did not. So um, Next, let's talk about voting machine vulnerabilities. There was a professor who showed there was an ability, and I may have a duplicate slide here. There was a professor that showed there was an ability to spread malware from the county's central election management system to every voting machine in the jurisdiction. So voting machines can be attacked at scale without physical access using this mechanism. So the report explains how attackers could essentially exploit those flaws to change votes or potentially even affect election outcomes in Georgia because Georgia refused to actually put in place the fixes to the vulnerabilities that this professor came up with. Next is abnormal clustering. So in on election day voting, the early vote result displayed an unusual pattern. Basically, once 250 ballots had been processed, a visible shift occurred, resulting in a high degree of clustering and unusual uniformity. So this departure is not this is not expected from normal human voting behavior. Statistically significant larger numbers of people broke party lines to vote for Trump versus Harris, which seems a little strange given everything that's happened and what Trump's first term was like. So that basically means that there were a large number of people who voted Democrat in the Senate and the House, but voted for Trump as president, which is highly unusual. And it was captured as something called drop-off rate. So if you look at the source, you'll see the drop-off rate for Trump was I forget if it's lower or higher is better, but essentially a lot more people crossed party lines from state to president to vote for Trump, which is very unusual. Um, and then there's something called the Russian tail. So basically, if you look at these two graphs, they're normal curves. Ignore this third one, that's just from the graphic. But normally you would see a normal curve of voting. Now, with the Russian tail, what happens is votes basically, fraudulent votes get put into the count. And what ends up happening is this strange, when you mix these two together, it's called the Russian tail because it kind of lifts up this vote a little bit like that. And what ends up happening is that, there's not a normal statistical outcome based on how things would vary based on polling stations, during the election. There was a basically not explaining this very well, but basically in Russian and Russian influenced elections, the shape of the curve it basically looks like it's made up of two bell curves that are overlaid with each other. And that's what's called the Russian tail. And we had exactly those indicators in the US election. So there actually was statistical evidence that there was some meddling, probably by Russia, because it has telltale Russian signs. Russia meddles in a lot of elections, not just ours.
There's like a bimodal distribution, really, you mean, kind of?
I'm not sure. I didn't take statistics other than in corporate America, and I don't know what a
Sorry.
bimodal distribution is, so I won't pretend to. Um,
That
but
sounds correct. If you were to sum up two Gaussians with, let's say, different means, you would see exactly this.
Exactly.
thank you for the people who know statistics better than me. So I'm trying to explain it in layman terms because that's how I understand it. Although I want to take statistics someday, but I haven't gotten there yet. Um, So the Election Truth Alliance is a small volunteer group that has so far found Russian tail data available in swing states of both Nevada and Pennsylvania. If their data is correct, that would mean the election outcome should have been different. They were actually running a petition to audit the votes and a fundraiser for when the petition fails. Um, I investigated the organization, the Election Truth Alliance, and they seem, from preliminary investigations, to be very legitimate. Next, this is the security engineer. A little bit more on him. He provided a 96-page result report on the vulnerabilities, and he noted that there was an issue in Michigan voting that was caused, but it was caused based on user error. And so whether or not the votes were influenced intentionally or through user error, the results are still the same, and there were results found or like changes in results found based on user error. So um, last minute code changes. So this is very interesting. ProVNV is a company that certifies 40% of the US's voting machines. They're called ESNS brand voting machines. They approved changes to the code of these machines, causing calling the test minimal. Basically, the Latin is de minimis is what they use, basically saying they're minimal and so they don't need testing, even though the code of the voting machines was changed, which in theory could change the way the votes were counted. Or expose, and this is more my hypothesis, or expose those machines to other vulnerabilities. And I'll go into what I mean by that later. The ProVMV website used to show proof that the voting machines were accurately tested. It was always there historically, but right after the 2024 elections, all of that proof totally disappeared. And then they said, "Oh, the government body that regulates us is the place that you need to go for that." But I actually didn't find it on that website either. So there was an assertion on the website that they pointed to that the voting machines were safe and secure. But there was, and by the way, it was very hard to get a lot of the research that I did out of ChatGPT. I ended up having to go to Google Gemini to get some of the research because it's like it started answering, I can't answer that, which is, not what I want from the LLM that I've put the most amount of money into and the most amount of faith into. Um, because it's censoring, and I really think that the truth comes out if you censor less. The only time that I think censoring makes sense is when you're trying to prevent significant unnecessary harm. And in those cases that I think censoring makes sense. Um, that said, I'm going to talk about a hypothetical machine attack vector. So this blog entry that I shared, or that I share in the chat, this is a different one than the one that I think I originally said. Basically, had a hypothesis that the voting machines were connected to smart devices that could have gotten full access to the voting machines. And then they claimed that Palantir, which was owned by Peter Thiel, a big Trump and Vance supporter who donated $16 million, over $16 million to them, was brought in to erase the digital footprints on the voting machines. Now, I don't think it's likely Palantir erased any digital footprints themselves. I researched that. They don't have any division capable of doing that. But I will say Palantir has a ton of government contracts. They certainly have the resources within their network to find someone that could do that if they wanted to. Um, so, well, I think that, yeah. So basically, I think that what should be investigated is to see whether or not, this claim could be true. Basically, they claim that Elon Musk's Starlink, direct-to-cell satellites would communicate with the voting machines to give them commands. That's absolutely false because the voting machines don't have any telecommunications materials in them. So that's not true. However, and this is a big however, there was a company called Trip Light, which very interestingly was completely donated to a very strong right-wing company who then sold it to Eaton Corporation. Those UPSs, Universal Power Supplies, basically gave the backup battery so that if power went out, the voting machines could continue to be run. However, they were smart UPS devices, and there is room in those devices for you to put a modem that would connect directly to Starlink satellites. So what could have happened, and this is, not investigated, but I think is worth investigating because it is an attack vector that's realistic and that there's data supporting it. Like what kind of person donates a $1.65 billion company to someone else just for fun, right? That's unusual. Um, what could have happened is that the satellite sent modem commands to the UPS, the smart UPS, which could run code and would connect to the voting machines through um, what's it called? Um, like a smart drive, USB port. And so the UPS could have actually um, attacked the voting machines and changed votes, which would actually explain the statistical anomalies that we're seeing in the data from the places that have been investigated carefully. So actually, the whole story really hangs together in a very interesting way. Um, so I think that would be worth investigating. I hope someone will launch a lawsuit to investigate it and start doing, information acts. Now, I have to say that if there was someone that cleaned up the mess, then maybe the forensic data would not be there anymore, and all we can look at is the voting patterns. But even if there are anomalies in the voting patterns, that's enough that I would be concerned. Another thing that concerned me is when I was reading about all this stuff, everybody said, but the election was certified, so there's nothing we can do about it. And I'm sorry, but I call BS on that. Like, if the election was not free and fair, we should be recalling that election and holding another one that's more free and fair. Like that doesn't make sense to me that if you know that an election was invalid and that it was meddled with, that you would allow that election to go because what that does is it sends a message to every other country, mess with our elections because once the certification day comes back, it's too late for us to do anything about it. So just hide it well enough that you get to certification day and suddenly we've asked every other country in the world to meddle with our politics. That's really not a smart message to send. What's a much better message to send is to say, look, if we find there was malfeasance in or like, anything unfair in our elections, then we would we would vote to uncertify those elections and we would say they weren't valid and we're going to go back to the drawing board and hold another freer and fairer election. So I'm going to go to an actual lawsuit that has made it all of Trump's lawsuits saying that the election that he lost was stolen didn't get into what's called discovery. In a lawsuit, there are multiple phases. The first phase, it can be dismissed right away. And if it's dismissed right away, that means that even giving the benefit of the doubt to all the facts that were alleged, there's still no chance that there was wrongdoing. And so there's just something flawed in the entire argument itself. All of Trump's lawsuits were thrown out by courts. This one, however, actually has gotten into discovery, which I think should be really interesting. It's in Rockland County, New York. And it's basically, according to the complaint, more voters who swore legal affidavits, which means that they could get a felony for lying. If you swear an affidavit, you got a felony account if you're lying. And they said they voted for independent U.S. state Senate candidate Diane Sare, S-A-R-E, and that more people voted for her than the Rockland County Board of Elections counted and certified, contradicting the results of that county. So the complaint also cited numerous statistical anomalies in the presidential election results. So there were hundreds of voters that chose Democratic candidate Kirsten Gillibrand for Senate, but none voted for former Vice President Kamala Harris. So there was a professor of physics and astronomy in the University of Alabama in Huntsville and the author of the Statistics and Analysis of Scientific Data, who said in a paper that the 2024 presidential election results were statistically highly unlikely in four of the five towns in Rockland County when compared with the 2020 results. So this seems to be evidence that the voting machines were not accurately counting votes in the favor of Donald Trump. So in the lawsuit, they're asking for all the right information. I looked at the actual data that they're requesting. There's only one thing that I think they made as a mistake. They're asking for the code that the company submitted to the state of New York, which is called code in escrow, which basically means that the voting machine companies can choose, which code they're going to submit to the state. That's not the code they should be looking at. They should be looking at forensic audits of what code was actually on the voting machines and what the actual code on the voting machines was. Because I'll tell you, I know from my GE days that a lot of the times the developers wouldn't submit the same code to escrow as we were using in the system, and that meant we didn't have the right code in escrow. And so they could have given perfectly, fine code in escrow, but not have the perfectly fine code on the voting machines. So I'm a little concerned about that. But other than that, they were asking for all the right things. So I'm criticizing the one mistake. They had a lot of good stuff that they're asking for, and I hope that they'll find some conclusive evidence of either that everything was fair or that everything wasn't, as long as the truth be known. So next, the 2024 Independent Observers was a group of international folks that came to the US to make sure that there were free and fair elections. There were 200 and something of them. They suggested the following things. One is adopting new legislation, basically looking at creating geographical jurisdictions that require federal clearance before changing the election laws to ensure timely and effective safeguards against discrimination based on race and language. There were a bunch of laws passed that made it harder for minorities to vote and for women to vote. And there was another big one that was passed that makes it much harder for married women to vote by the Republican administration. Basically, what they're doing is saying that if you change your name based on marriage, then you need to give all kinds of evidence that you may not realize you need to have, and you may not be able to quickly dig up in time for the election. So, that said, they also suggested reassessing the Electoral College system, which I think is a great idea. The whole idea of the Electoral College puts the entire presidential election in the hands of 12 otherwise not very influential states. And it basically says that if you're in a state that goes cleanly Democrat or Republican, your vote doesn't count because your state is going to go wherever it goes, regardless of who you vote for. So I really think one person, one vote is how it should be, and the majority winner should win. Um, and I should I forget the name of it. Maybe it's not the majority because Trump didn't actually get the majority, but he got more votes than Kamala Harris. But
Plurality.
plurality, thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you, Lawrence. So, um, the person with the plurality of votes should win nationally. So next is that they said that there should be discouraging of inflammatory and divisive rhetoric in campaigns, as well as the spread of false information and unsubstantiated claims about election integrity. And while I agree with that, I think we have to follow all paths of actual examples where there might have been election fraud and election, poor election handling to the extent that we can, and see whether or not there's something to be found there. Now, also they recommended developing comprehensive risk management tools to help election stakeholders counter disinformation and protect electoral assets and processes. By the way, I think um, election fraud accusations should should be data exploration. It should go into discovery, and we should gather the data and see whether or not there is anything to see there. And it should be done really quickly because I don't want people to lose faith in democratic institutions. Even though I think that this campaign was meddled with, I don't think the right answer is to sweep it under the rug and say everything's okay, nothing to see here. The right answer is to find out whether or not anything was wrong, but quickly and efficiently. And once we know whether or not anything was wrong, spread that, loud and clear. And only then and only then should we say whether or not the case is settled. Um, Next, regulating campaign contributions and disclosure for all campaign committees and ensuring that independent groups and nonprofits engaging in campaign activities or donation disclose their funding sources. You know, right now you're allowed to donate unlimited amounts of money to a PAC that supports a politician. That politician is allowed to do favors for you when they get into power, and it's all considered a-okay. It's just considered a gratuity. It's not considered a bribe. And that is very wrong. And the worst part is that no one is allowed to see who gave money to whom. So we can't even follow the money to say, oh, well, Elon, and we do know some of them, the prominent ones, but only I don't even know how we get that information because it is possible for them to do it anonymously. Maybe they're just not, hopefully they're not very good at hiding their tracks or they are choosing not to. But unfortunately, it is possible for people to hide their tracks and not show who donated how much money to where. And so you can't follow the money to see who's doing favors for what and show that it's quid pro quo, which basically means you're doing a favor for money. Um, Unfortunately, our Supreme Court has said that doing favors for someone who donated a lot of money to get you in a position of power is a gratuity, not a bribe. That's probably another story for another day. So, improving interstate cooperation to increase the accuracy of voter registration data. Blake actually posted something talking about how a Democrat was describing how they could commit voter fraud, and he was talking about busing in people from out of state. But you can't do that because you would need all the documentation to prove those people were in state. So it would be a very large and complicated matter to do that, and it would be a conspiracy that included so many people it couldn't stay hidden. And in fact, even talking about it, it didn't stay hidden, although I don't think it was ever done. At least there's no evidence that it was ever done. And if it had been done, I'm sure someone would have found the evidence if they found some guy in politics talking about it. So, strengthening media freedom by decriminalizing defamation. So, I looked into this one. The general idea is that if you commit libel or slander, basically putting down someone's opinion or putting down, like, say, criticizing someone, essentially, criticizing a person either in writing or by voice, libel is by writing and slander is by voice, then you shouldn't be, the media shouldn't be liable to basically getting criminalized, criminal attacks, trying to prevent them from saying negative things about politicians. So, for example, if someone says something negative about Trump, Trump right now could sue them, have the attorney general sue them in a criminal court to try to get them put into jail for criticizing Trump. Well, that's not a good place to be. And in fact, there aren't really good safeguards for journalist sources today, which means journalists can't protect their sources, which means if someone is a whistleblower on Trump or Harris or any other politician, the whistleblowers can't be protected. And that's really bad because we know, and I did another event on whistleblowers, we know how badly whistleblowers have been treated in the past, and they're treated very, very badly, both by Democrats and Republicans, by the way. One of my biggest criticisms of Obama is how badly he treated whistleblowers. He was really horrible to them. So, the next thing is, and the next thing is to amend federal and state laws to guarantee unimpeded access for international and nonpartisan citizen observers at all stages of the electoral process. I think that's key because a lot of the ways to meddle with the elections require physical access to the servers, but I noted that not all of them did, right? There were other ways in, but they also came with their own complications. But if federal and state laws are the ones stopping people from getting, international objective observers from getting access to these systems, they can't see whether or not someone is meddling with them. Like, is there something in the USB drive of that voting machine? And if there is, there's not supposed to be. So, that could be a sign that there's bad actors going on. So next, so how close was this? How close was this election, and is there a possibility that meddling impacted the election outcome? I will tell you it was a very close vote. We have 330 million people in the US. If 116,000 people, which is 0.7% of the total number of votes in Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, had changed their vote from Trump to Harris, Harris would have won the election. So AI sources and web sources, I said, have read that none of the election interference would have changed the outcome of the election. I call BS. I think that's nonsense. 116,000 people. I would much rather face the hard truth and be feeding into the same thing that the Russian and Chinese are trying to do, which is to, tell us that our elections may not be safe. I would much rather do that if it's true, because you know what? If we hide the truth, then guess what? If our elections were meddled with last time, guess what the midterms are going to be? They're going to be a sweep for the Republicans. And if that's what we see, I think, after this big ugly bill was passed, and after 16 million people lose insurance or 17 million lose insurance, and we double the homeless rate, we 10x the number of unsheltered people, I will be shocked if that was not because of some sort of meddling with the elections. Um, Now, just the doppelganger network alone could have shifted the outcome with tens of thousands of fake stories. If each one of those stories changed literally only 10 people's minds, the right 10 people, it would have shifted the election outcome. So, given the amount of election interference in Trump's favor, I think the news is consistently against this hypothesis. If you Google all the news, they want us to have faith in our voting system, and I get that. I want to have faith in our voting system, but the only way that I can have faith in our voting system is if I know that possibly, like good evidence pointing to like bad actors is actually investigated and, discarded because there's no actual evidence to prove those things true. But we should at least look for them. We shouldn't just not look for them, which is what we're doing now, and say everything's okay, everything's okay. It's like getting shot with a poisoned arrow and, just covering it up with a band-aid and saying, "Oh, everything's okay, everything's okay." Well, in 10 minutes later, your democracy is going to be dead, right? And that's not what any of us want, I think, although there are people that do want it. So, and they want it not because they're horrible people, by the way. I think they just think that people who have money are the ones that are in a better position to rule. And that's what the Heritage Foundation's 2025 is about, I think. And at least from what I've seen of it, is they feel like the people who should be running the country are the wealthy, and the people who should have the power are the wealthy. And everything that we see points to this, where the legalization of bribery, it's a class war, right? What's going on right now is a class war. And unfortunately, a lot of the poor are siding with the wealthy of the wealthy. And not all the wealthy are part of the conspiracy to have the wealthy run the country, luckily. So there are allies and advocates among the wealthy to advocate for fairness. And I would argue we should all be advocating for fairness. I did a recent LinkedIn post about how, not too recent, but within the last few months, about how it's more important to do what's fair than what's in your best interest. And I think it's really important that we all remember that fairness should come before our best interest. But I'm digressing a little bit. So, what do we do about it? If the election might have been meddled with, I think first of all, we need to teach critical thinking skills and healthy skepticism. That's one of the purposes of the FTI. If you get upset about something, the first thing you should do is not to share it. You should look into fact checking it, look at the sources. What's the domain? Is it what it appears to be? Is the source objective? Is it known to be factual? Look at media bias, fact check to check their media bias. All of these things will help us get more aligned with the actual facts rather than the fake news. Now, um, so the other thing is that the FTI's first intention is to seek truth and be fair. And I think by seeking truth, we can combat disinformation and misinformation through our own scrutiny and hard work. We can stop fake news from traveling faster than real news, but only if we spread the word to other people in our circles to use the FTI's now six intentions. I split the fourth intention into two intentions. I'll probably talk about that another night. It's more of a minor clerical thing, but I think it's important because the priority needs to be on preventing significant unnecessary harm from happening to any human being, full stop. And then after that, increasing happiness and decreasing harm. So, um, and I do think that there should be lawsuits about let me get to the next one. So the other thing that I think we should do about it is we should audit the voting machines. Let's be sure all the votes were counted fairly. Let's see if there was any software that could have modified the voting machines votes. Let's look for forensic evidence in the UPSs, in the voting machines themselves. Let's look at what the code looked like and what the logic was like, because there was that change that was supposed to be de minimis, but it was a software change. De minimis isn't supposed to be used for software changes, but they still classified it as that anyway. So, I think we should investigate the significant areas that could have influenced the outcome, because I have faith in humanity and people, and I think that it's very unlikely that Trump would have won as many votes as he did. And the statistics actually agree with me, the statistical anomalies. So that said, that is our last slide, and I'm gonna
Statistics
leave.
can be skewed one way or the other.
I'll let people raise their hands and go ahead, Abe. Oh, and I forgot. Let me quickly say our kind of spiel before Q&A. So limit comments and questions to one comment or question at a time. Limit to less than 2 or 3 minutes. I'm going to try to add the meeting timers so that we can add 3 minutes. Um, where's the meeting timers? I'll try to figure it out. And then um, if you want to respond to what someone just said by asking a clarifying question or making a quick comment, just keep it to under 20 seconds. But after the person with their hand up finishes speaking, just jump in, or after I finish speaking or anyone finishes speaking, just jump in and say your comment. Just keep it short. And that way we can have a conversation even amongst this large group that feels very organic. So that said, I'm going to let Abe start off.
Good presentation, Garrett.
Thank you.
One of the things which I think you didn't address was the APAC, the fundamentalist Christian, Jewish, and Israel lobby. the
Mm.
influence they have on our elections. I mean, anytime anyone said anything, they were called anti-Semitic. And that permeates in society today, in college campuses throughout. Because I have a daughter who studies in an Ivy League institution, and she was telling me it's not like the way they make it out to be, the
Yeah,
media.
I'm really glad you're bringing that up, Abe. I was not on my radar screen, to be honest. People have mentioned APAC for me, but apparently APAC donated over $100 million in the election cycle. I'd have to figure out, it looks like it focused heavily on Democratic primaries, that it viewed critical of U.S. support for Israel, including members of the Squad, which is AOC's group, which I think they're like the most outspoken. They're the champions we have in the class war, right? The institutional Democrats aren't always champions in the class war. They are more so than the Republicans, but the AOC Squad is like the ones that are the most outspoken against the wealthy. So yeah, it's a good point, Dave. I missed that one. Thank you for pointing it out. And now
I
you know I
mean,
don't mind someone proving me wrong. Just jump on board. I'm here to seek truth, not be right about everything. I'm not. So, uh,
thank you.
thank you. Lawrence, go ahead. Oh, and if I can, just other thing responding to Abe, I do think there's a big problem with the way that anti-Semitic is being used with college campuses. And it seems like to me, we're almost getting to a point where it says where saying I feel bad for innocent people in Gaza dying is being treated as anti-Semitic. And that is literally what I've seen people post news articles more or less saying. And that is not anti-Semitic at all. It's called being a compassionate human being. We had an event on the Israel-Gaza thing. I won't rehash that territory, but I will say I think anti-Semitic is being very much overused. I've been called anti-Semitic even though I'm half Jewish. Um, so what can I say? I guess everyone can be an anti-Semite apparently. So Lawrence, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Garrett. I wanted to point out that a voting machine is a machine that turns paper ballots into counts. So where are the paper ballots? And why don't they do a hand recount of them?
Yeah. So
And oh, I had another point too. Oh, yeah. So the other point is if there was this, massive vote rigging technical scheme, it took more than 5 or 10 people to implement it. And sooner or later, someone is going to come forward and admit to it. And that will be very interesting to see how the country reacts to that.
I agree with you. Um, Although, when Trump supporters have we're seeing what's happening, right, with the Epstein files, right? And I'm going to ask you just for a reminder for everyone, stick to one point because I already forgot your first point. I'm going to say the second, but raise your hand
Paper
again.
ballots.
What's that? Oh, paper ballot. So I had read somewhere and I fact checked this and it did not seem to be true that all the margins Trump won over were just over the ones that were required for doing paper ballot recounts. But I did not find that to be true. And so, but I will say like, um, there also are ways that if you hacked a voting machine, you could get it to print out the wrong paper ballot. Meaning like if it's like a back of the system printout, you could just tell it to print the same thing as it counted. And so I don't know that the paper ballots would necessarily save the vote. I think that it needs to get more fundamental in a technology perspective because technology will do whatever you ask it to. If I vote for Harris and it tells the system to print out a Trump ballot, it's going to print out a Trump ballot. It doesn't care who I voted for. It does what it's told.
But aren't those ballots filled out by human beings? I mean, when I go to vote, I have
Oh,
an
there's
actual
electronic
physical.
voting machines. So I'm talking about electronic voting
Yeah,
machines.
that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah. Yeah, if I filled out a paper ballot, then yes, you're right. There's a paper trail, but a lot of voting machines these days are electronic, and that was the Dominion voting machines were electronic, and that's what the whole lawsuit was about.
Right.
Okay,
Um,
thanks.
yep. And if I missed something, Lawrence, just raise your hand again. Again, I'm single threaded, so I can only do one thing at a time. So, Carl, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question, a clarifying question. During your presentation, right around where you had that Russian bell curve, you mentioned something about that there was an anomaly because a lot of the voters that voted for Trump did not vote for in the previous election for Trump. Did I get that
Wait, say
correctly?
that again?
That there was like there was I thought you said there was an anomaly because a lot of the voters that didn't vote for Trump in the previous election voted for Trump in this election. And the first, and I don't know if that's what you meant or said, because for me, like I thought that this
No,
election,
not about a different election. I
yeah,
looked at the comparisons of like the prior election to this election. I didn't see any like really suspicious things. From like there was a really good, I forget what news source it was. There was a really good one that showed like from 2020 to 2024 how many people switched sides and all this stuff. And I
right,
analyzed all of it, but I didn't see anything suspicious from any of that.
okay,
What it was is that people would vote for like 10% of people that more than 10% of people that voted for a Democrat for the state voted for Trump as a Republican for president.
Right.
Whereas only like 1 to 2% of Republican people that voted Republican for the state voted for Harris, which is like a very big difference.
is
And
it?
You're
yeah,
talking down ballot, right?
yeah,
Okay,
that they called it I think it down ballot is another name for it. They called it something else that I sent in the
okay,
presentation, but I found that whatever they called it has multiple definitions, so I hated using that term because it's ambiguous. So I tried to describe what it was, which is just someone voting for, Democrat for state and then Republican for president or vice versa. And what happened is there was a whole lot more people voting Democrat for state and Republican for president than there were the other way around,
got it. Okay,
That's very uncommon.
which is
okay,
very uncommon. Normally, it's very uncommon, but in this race, it was very common.
right, okay. Because my understanding was just from like generally, without being very specific, that a lot of people just didn't really were pissed off about the whole Biden administration, didn't like Harris, and so even though they were still Democrat, they still voted for Trump, or maybe didn't vote for.
If they had not voted, it wouldn't have been part of that 10%. So it's
Okay,
only people that voted Democrat and then voted Trump. And
right.
someone who was upset about Harris getting the candidacy but like Biden would not have voted for Trump.
Okay,
I mean, the vast majority of them would not.
okay.
Um, Great. Thanks, Carl.
Mhm.
Nancy.
Hi, three major concerns and facts in regards to what you're stating. In 2018, Trump signed the bill to create CISA, which is the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency,
Hmm.
and appointed Krebs as the director. Now, Krebs also did basically solidify and vouch for the results of the 2020 election. Trump did terminate him. I think that's a major
Yeah.
obvious point, okay? The other thing is that in February of 25, Bondi disbanded the FBI task for foreign investigations regarding foreign election interference in February of 25 this year. And with the sweeping terminations and dismantling of federal agencies, CISA, as well as federal agencies that are based on election security, have been dismantled and terminated. So you're saying audits, and for the particular, we're the watchdogs for this. In other words, the watchdogs have been let go.
Well, actually, so I would love to see your sources on that, just to understand it better. Because the what I read was that most of the watchdogs are actually private companies that are certified, and VNV is one of the private. Pro VNV is one of the private companies. There's one other private company that are both certified, and those two companies are the ones that are really validating the voting machines. Now, you are right that the makeup of the people who were in charge of the government organization that um, holds those companies accountable was like highly Republican slanted, let's put it that way, highly Trump slanted. And so they are Trump loyalists that are running that organization. So that's accurate. I don't think that the lack of manpower on the government side had anything to do with the audits because the audits were all done by private entities. And so what I find really suspicious is if those private entities are private entities getting paid by the government to audit and they're not showing any of the audit logs anymore when they used to show them, that's highly suspicious. Now, if there were a bunch of government layoffs and the government didn't show the audit logs because they didn't have the manpower, I would understand it. But that wasn't what I took away from my research.
Okay, but it was all over the news, okay, that Bondi dismantling and disbanding the FBI task force on investigative foreign election interference,
Hmm.
that was public knowledge, number
Yeah,
one.
yeah, that makes sense.
And the
Yeah,
second
because
thing is that
yeah,
if it's related to Project 2025, if you read Project 2025, which of course I did, okay,
yeah,
a couple years ago, is that you will find that as it states, all of this dismantling and termination of federal agencies is for the purpose of Trump and his people to put in their own people, which
yeah,
of course
Right.
creates total control and bias.
right. And then there's no one to challenge the government wrongdoing.
Correct.
So right now we still have checks and balances where we see
Right.
people being put into concentration camps. We still have people in the government who will be sympathetic to those people in the concentration camps. If all the people in the government, or even four-fifths of them, or even, three-fifths of them are all Republican Trump supporters, then you don't get anyone speaking out negatively because anyone that speaks out negatively would get fired indiscriminately and punished, potentially with death threats coming to their house every day, right? Which has happened to a lot of the people that have spoken out against Trump.
What about the states, Nancy? Are there still any organizations in the states that would be able to check that it could be watchdogs on this? Or have their agencies been kaput as well?
What do you mean as far as what is the state? What is, well, what is,
Do
what are
the
the,
states, Garrett and Nancy, do the states have any checks on this, or is all the checking on these elections federal?
well, you have basically, you have security being done at all the voting stations that are being
Yeah,
done.
there are both
But
state and
as,
federal checks and balances, Deborah.
but I think Larry had mentioned this just a little bit ago, okay, is I think a major problem, an issue, and there was a huge, huge documentary done in 2000, okay, when the Chad crap in Florida came up, is the security, the machines can be easily hacked. That's been proven. Voting machines can be easily hacked.
Oh, right. I'm just saying, does anyone check at the state level as well, and are they still on the
Yes,
job?
state and local governments are actually the primary authority for voting. The federal government has support oversight and creates standards, but the state and local governments are the ones that are the primary.
And are those checks still there? They haven't been dismantled.
But it's more so when you're looking at the state situation, and Greg Pallas and Tom Hartman, and I posted this into the chat area, okay,
Okay.
have done incredible investigation and in regards to the fact of voter suppression, what's happening with voter suppression within each particular state, making
Okay.
it difficult, you know what I mean?
Right.
Well, even the
I get
SAFE
it.
Act, the fact that women within the SAFE Act have to basically now have, well, it hasn't passed the Senate, it did pass the House, okay? That they have to prove they changed their name and they no longer have the name that's on their birth certificate, okay? In any form of real proven ID, they can't vote.
Yeah,
Right. I knew there was a lot of suppression. Okay. Thanks.
yep. Sunny, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm having a difficult time trying to believe. I'm just being a skeptic. That's it.
Please,
I'm
please
just,
do. Help me understand where you disagree.
yeah, because it almost seems like, I hear the word, oh, I researched. I mean, you only get information which is out there. They know how to keep things under wraps. I mean, even JFK, what happened? After so many years, we're getting some information. So, what makes us think that we will be able to get? We have both sides trying to put forth information, and it's so hard to really know who's saying what. I mean, you say you research. There's no way you will be able to get to the bottom of it. It's almost like giving food to people on an animal farm. It's
Well,
what food is being placed in the farm is all what you eat. That's it.
Sonny, let me give an example. Have you been to Australia before?
Yeah,
Sonny,
go ahead.
have you been to Australia before?
No,
No, neither have I. Does Australia exist?
that's not the it doesn't equate. It doesn't
Just help
relate.
me,
It doesn't
just
relate to
bear
what
with
I'm
me a
saying
second. Does
because
Australia exist?
here's what I'm trying to say.
How do you know Australia exists?
Okay, so the Australia existing, there's nobody out there I know who's trying to prove Australia doesn't exist. Do you know anybody?
Flat earthers are trying to say that Earth is flat, and there are over 300,000 of them in America.
I'm not talking about flat earthers. Do you know
Well,
anybody who says that Australia doesn't exist? Do you know anybody?
then let's use flat Earth. Is Earth flat?
Okay. Okay. So
The
that's
question.
what I'm saying, So you keep moving the goalpost. Here is what I'm trying to.
Sunny. Come
Yeah.
on, it's the same point. The point is, can you know anything? How can you know anything with any degree of certainty? Well, if you look for sources on the right, sources on the left, and sources in the center, and you research how reliable those sources are, you can actually pull together a picture of the truth that becomes pretty vivid and very supportable and defensible. And that's what I do when I say I researched. I'm very
Yeah.
good
I'm
researcher. I got paid
skeptical.
lots of money to research for big companies. Like,
Yeah.
which software should our company use? Like, I researched the heck out of those things.
Like
I've
even you said that you only put certain things in the code in the escrow, but we operate in a different way. So what is in the escrow is what people think it is, but you are doing something different with a different code, right? So that's the perfect example of what you yourself said. What happens is exactly my point that only what is out there for us to feed on is available for us to research because there's a lot of things hidden on both sides. So that's where my skepticism lies.
But Sonny, if it's hidden by enough people, then it's not going to be hidden anymore because someone will create an anonymous website saying that that's what's going on, right? That's what a conspiracy is. If you have enough people in a conspiracy, someone's going to leak it, right? Because someone's going to get, everybody has an inherent desire to seek truth. We all have it. Now, some people's confirmation bias outweighs their desire to seek truth. So I would argue that if enough people are trying to keep a secret, and this is what Carl said, if it's true that some of the stuff that I was saying might have happened, it'll probably come out eventually. And when it does, how will it be handled? And if we research it, we'll know whether or not it happened, and then we'll see what happens when it comes out. If we never research it, we never know. Now, I did my research, but you're right, Sonny. I can only do so much research. I can look at left, right, and center. I can look at reliable sources, but I can't do a forensic audit on the voting equipment. So that's where we need to call on people who have the ability to do these things and lay to rest whether or not our votes really are free, or voting was really free and fair, and whether or not there was election interference. We
Why
sh
would Harris concede then?
Why did Gore concede? He didn't lose.
That's it. Yeah.
So these people make mistakes. They're human. Sorry, go ahead. I
I
did.
actually think she didn't concede because it would have been the same. We all laughed at Trump for 4 years
Agree.
about all this crying wolf, right? It would have been the same thing.
And then Trump would have said, "Oh yeah, like you guys said the elections weren't meddled with when I called it, but then when you lose, now you're
Exactly.
saying the elections are meddled with." That would have been his MO. And
Yeah.
she knew that, and she knew that enough independents would have gone for that, that he would have gotten the support, and he would have been even more popular than he is now.
Yep. Reverse psychology. Absolutely.
Projection and reverse psychology. And he's
Exactly.
very good at both, very good at them. Do I think he would have gotten an AGPA as a computer scientist? No, I don't think he would have. But is he effective at using those techniques? Very much so. He's very much good at those. So
He's
Jeff, go
not real
ahead.
smart, but he's very cunning.
Yes. Well said, Deborah.
Garrett, I think you started a whole chat debate here. Now we're trying to figure out, whether Australia really exists and whether Will is in
Oh
Australia.
boy.
But how do we know that Will is really in Australia? Just
Is
because,
Will really in Australia? I mean,
man,
what's on the side of Earth
Well,
if
what
Earth is
about Hugh
flat?
Jackman and Simon Baker?
If the Earth is flat, what's on the side of the edge of the Earth? Like where does the water fall off to?
The Kraken,
Yeah, there you go. The turtle, because Earth is
the
on a
great
plane.
turtle.
We
Yeah.
all know that.
yeah.
So, Jeff, how are you?
Hey, Garrett. Hey, thanks for another wonderful session.
Thank you.
Um, so, in the spirit of Australia, um, the it was an interesting lawsuit that the Dominion voting machines brought against Fox News, and one of the most interesting moments about it, and you kind of skipped through it there in your presentation, but I think for this topic, it really is important to know and to say what really happened there. So Dominion Voting Machine sued for something like, I don't remember exactly, something like $1 billion. And because they over and over again on Fox News said that Dominion voting machines were tampered with and that they were responsible for throwing the election. And it was just endless. And so Dominion voting machines sued them. And when 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 Fox defended itself, and it came right down to the last option that their attorneys had, they said what you said. They said, Fox News, we do not claim to be or attempt to be a news organization. We are an entertainment organization. And they still lost $787 million, nearly $1 billion in the settlement, despite the fact that they claimed that Fox News is actually not news. Um, it, it, that's the truth about what actually happened there from both sides and what the defense was. And so, to the extent that anybody ever claims that they are Fox News, they are fake news. They are entertainment news, and they said it themselves.
But
So
are their watchers aware that they said that?
I don't know. You
Yeah.
have
No,
to
because
ask
they
them.
don't publish that on Fox News.
If
The
if
Dominion lawsuit
I
somehow
mean,
was
so
never
many people
actually,
are actually getting, I'm just
Well,
saying, they're getting their new, they're getting
yeah,
their news.
yeah,
if,
it's
if
the
I may,
biggest
if I may
news network.
respond, if I may respond to Jeff Kahn,
Sure,
because
go ahead.
because um, I think I mentioned this before. In 2016, when Trump was elected, every single day, everybody was in shock, right? And trying to come to this, like, okay, what is he going to do today that's going to get him out of office, right? And every single day there was something. And then you would watch, and I mean, I'm a Democrat. I watch, the NPR and CNN and the MSNBC, and I was listening to every single day and just being dumbfounded that he wasn't getting out of office, right? So I was curious, and then I started watching Fox News, and then I would watch Fox News every single day for 4 years on my browser, CNN and Fox News at the same time, both little windows, seeing the same stories and how they were spinning it. And it was so freaking amazing that if you were watching just one or the other, you would have a completely 100% different view of reality. Now
Yeah,
imagine that Fox News is being watched. It's the number one, quote, news source in the country, far above CNN or MSNBC, where on top of that, with cognitive bias, echo chambers, social media, being in the group, constantly gets reinforced. And they do that every single day. I tell you, sometimes I would watch Fox News for 1 hour on its own, and I would be convinced that the other side is wrong, and oh my God, I would be outraged. And then you realize there's a lot of psychology being done then, and people are just watching it exclusively, thinking that it is a news organization. They make a lot of sense. They make great arguments. But if we're not smart enough to see the other side, which is the way critical thinking works, right? So
Yes.
critical dialogue, you got to see both sides and make your own opinion. Unfortunately, most of the country is not watching both sides. They're watching one or the other, and this is why it's so polarized. Yeah,
Yeah, I
it was
agree.
it
And
was awesome.
that's why like for years I've been telling everybody read the left, read the right, read the center. On anything
Yeah,
that's important, read left, right, and center. Because Carl, I did the same thing on important topics. And
yeah,
it is amazing how they spin it. And every once in a while they all are in sync with the wrong answer. And it doesn't happen very often, but it did with the war in Iraq. I read
yeah,
left, right, and center in the war in Iraq, and I was like, none of these guys have good evidence for going into Iraq. And then I watched Colin Powell's presentation. And I was like, no, that's BS. Like we had worse evidence in Colin Powell's, war in
yeah,
Iraq time than we did in the Bay of Pigs with, in the 50s in Cuba for the Cuban Missile Crisis. That doesn't make any sense. We have much better intel now. And
yeah,
so I was very against the war in Iraq. I was one of the few non-pacifists against it for that
yeah,
reason. But I think that watching left, right, and center is so important. I can't
yeah.
overemphasize how important that is enough.
There's actually some good news in the fact that a lot of people are realizing this, and there's actually more and more newsletters and more websites that are doing that in a really good way, that you can see, okay, what is the left saying, what is the right saying, what's the middle, what's the reality, if there's such a thing these days. So we just have to be more aware of it. A lot of people are not aware of these websites and newsletters that you can educate yourself in order to be a good, an informed voter.
What about NPR, Carl? Is that considered middle? NPR.
Unfortunately, not. It's likely to the left. It's not as bad as, for example, MSNBC, for example. But you can actually Google media bias. A lot of studies have been made, a lot of
Yeah.
scientific research, and you can see like
Reuters Reuters
with
is a very good middle of the road.
yeah, and then you'll
Reuters,
see where your favorite
NPR though is quite good, but I've seen stuff on NPR that had right-wing conspiracy theory stuff. So they
Mm,
sometimes do publish right-wing stuff. I did in the research for this, I forget what it was, but I read one article that was like, wait a minute, like that, and I fact checked and I was like, no, that's not true. I don't know, and it was by like a pretty famous NPR guy, and I was like, no, that's like
um,
it didn't hold up to scrutiny. So they're not always left-wing, but I think sometimes they publish stuff like that to try to make themselves feel center because they appear like I like the Colbert comment that facts have a well-known liberal bias, and that's not because facts have any bias. It's because like the right tends to make stuff up too often, and it hurts their credibility when they're subjected to scrutiny.
What do
Um,
you think of the Atlantic or the
I think it's
Nation?
right of center.
Uh, a quick question. Like, you know,
it's right, yeah. Oh, left
uh,
center, the Atlantic.
But
yeah,
if you really want to get some straight factual information, C-SPAN, I think, is your best source. You're getting the
And it's
information right
good.
out of the horse's mouth, right out of basically, the congressional hearings, Senate
Yeah,
hearings.
assuming you can stay awake, that's the problem with
It
C-SPAN.
just takes so long because you're actually
It's
watching the
slow.
hearing, and
It's
that's a
slow.
Record
long
it.
time way of
I
getting
mean,
it.
I record it.
Oh,
uh,
good.
That's smart. Yeah,
uh,
I
Just
get it.
like YouTube, you could have it on 1.5 speed, maybe. Yeah.
I think, we're taking it too literally. One of the things which impressed me was what happened in the mayoral race in New York City. I mean, you had billionaires, and even today, Fox News is pounding away trying to make that guy, what's his name, Mamdani, like as if, he doesn't know what he's doing. But people have the common sense to understand he's the best hope with all these billionaires and, reputed
Not
people
just
around.
billionaire, but sex offender as well. So for Cuomo.
That's right. Yep.
So Cherie, how are you? Yeah, there you go.
Can
Now
you
you
hear
go.
me now?
Yep,
Okay.
now go ahead.
Hi, I've been thoroughly enjoying all this and taking it all in.
Good.
And I have just one that I was noticing that obviously you cannot look at everything on Facebook. Most of it's lies. But I noticed a couple of different things, and I guess you just can't believe any of it. There was a couple of people from MSNBC, Rachel Maddow, supposedly went and gave 3.5 million to Texas for the floods, and actually went and helped, and supposedly Bruce Springsteen did. And then I saw a picture of Elon Musk crying and saying he did too. So I was talking to a friend who checks everything, and I said, do you still use Snopes? You know which one that is?
Yep.
And that's like an old good one, but she said she thinks it's gone AI. So I just wondered if anybody knew anything about that, because I feel like I can't believe, obviously you can't believe anything you hear on Facebook, but it's a little disappointing. It's disappointing.
What's that called?
There's
Snopes, S-N-O-P-E-S, I believe.
Factcheck.org.
No.
Oh, that one I forgot about. Okay.
No, GPT anyway says that Snopes doesn't use AI to form opinions or produce its fact checks. I don't think they
Oh,
could do that, because if they did do that, they
okay.
would lose all reputation. Now, they might use AI to write content and to come up with images and videos, which they should, because that's more efficient. And if they don't do that, someone else is going to do it. And so they kind of have to use AI where it helps them be more efficient. But I
Okay.
don't think they use it for determining what's factual and what's not.
Because you get to the point where you're like, you're trying to fact check stuff, but are you getting, other than watching, as you were saying, Carl, and I was thinking the same thing. I watch both, and I'm just gobsmacked at the
Yeah, you need
difference.
to. You need to.
So,
If you want
but
to know the truth, you got to watch
yeah,
left, right, and center. All three, left, right, and center.
which one is center? Would that be Reuters?
Reuters and
Reuters?
AP, Associated Press.
yep,
A lot of people are saying BBC and Al Jazeera, believe it or not.
BBC, Guardian is
Yeah.
Oh, Guardian. I forgot about that.
yeah.
I
I
heard
would
bad things
I would
about the
call the
Guardian, but I read it and I think it's
Guardian's
good.
left.
Just,
That's
I
what
think the
the thing.
bottom line, everyone, the bottom line is do not count on only one source. Just like fact check,
Yeah.
Like, is this
Exactly.
true? How do I feel about it? And especially with Fox News, I mean, specifically Fox News, they're an outrage machine. Like every single thing was
Yes.
like trying to get you fear and outrage. Outrage, outrage, outrage constantly. It seems
The
to be their
Guardian,
only
the
narrative.
Guardian is left, by the way. Sorry for that.
Yeah.
And but I just want to. People are looking for shortcuts. The hard work is like putting in the hours for each topic, and it's boring. And we have lives. We have other things to do, right? So we
Right.
we don't want to put
Yeah.
in like 4
Yeah.
hours on like just one issue, and there's like
Yeah.
30 issues that are important.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. Pick an
So,
issue that passionate about.
Or
And
you have a really good point, and I want to try to come up with a solution for people. You don't have to read the whole article. You can literally take an article from the right and an article from the left and an article from the center, and you can ask GPT or your favorite LLM to summarize it for you, and you can read the entire art. You can read the articles from left, right, and center, the summaries of them, and say summarize this and give me the key points of fact, right? Ask it for the facts, extract the facts related to this article for me. And you can ask each LLM to do that for left, right, and center. I think actually we should do an event where we do this and show
Oh,
people
that would be
just how
fun.
easy it could
I'd like
be.
to see how you do that. Yes.
Yeah,
That would
let's
be
do
really a
that.
good event. Yeah. Let's
Thank
do
you,
it.
Bart. Bart, I knew I wanted to hear from you, my friend. Thank you. Good idea.
I'm
Sunny.
here just. No, lots of
Any
good.
tips you have for getting info in a shorter amount of time? If you did an event on that, that would be
I'm good
really
at
helpful.
that. Yeah, I do spend a lot of hours researching when I present. Like I spent probably 10 to 10 plus hours doing this one. But I use a lot of shortcuts to wade through a lot more information than most people will in 10 hours. So, yeah.
So
I'm already
appreciate
switching
it.
Faster
So
Garrett,
AI.
Garrett, there was one thing about that. When I go to Google, it right away says AI, and somebody was talking to me about sometimes they won't even tell you. they're monitoring themselves, and I don't know who they're monitoring from.
Well, I
They
think
won't
it's
even tell
because
you.
I mean, Google wants to push their AI, so that they've actually changed their search thing to have the AI first, but you can still keep going if you want
Oh,
and get
okay.
Yeah.
search.
Google.
Claude is one that will cite its sources.
Say that again, Carly.
Claude is an AI that will cite its sources
ChatGPT
specifically.
also cites its
Yes,
sources now if you do
exactly.
web search. So,
And
it
Perplexity.
didn't used to, and I didn't like that, and I was ready to switch to someone else, and then ChatGPT started giving sources, and then they got rid of them, and then they put them back. So,
There you go.
um,
Sonny, you got your hand up?
yeah, please.
You're on mute.
Yeah, Garrett, I really want to appreciate all that hard work.
Thank
I
you.
don't. I mean, I didn't mean that you didn't do a good job when I said about the research comment. But
That's okay.
it's more on myself. I feel frustrated. I hear what you've done. Kudos to you. Thank you so much for doing what you did. But here is I had a conservative friend. Try to, when you mentioned about how much Elon Musk gave to Trump, what for the election to 250 million? Is that
Mhm.
what you said?
Yeah.
So this conservative guy, he was saying, look, Trump can't be bought, and he was trying to prove his point that in spite of Elon giving so much money, hey, he's for the country, and I didn't know how to respond to it. Any thoughts? Any any wisdom? How I
Wait,
could have?
say
Wait,
that again. I'm sorry.
did your friends say that Trump cannot be bought?
Uh-huh.
Oh
Because
my
because
goodness.
because Elon gave 250 million, and still,
Give them a
uh,
plane.
y- you
So
know,
I'm
y-
curious. Yeah, what I would do in that case is just ask him why he thinks Trump can't be bought.
mm,
Like
Or if
ask with.
I think it's to
For
me it
so
was
that
obvious when he got the job for Doge. I mean, he freaking ran. He's like number two. He wasn't even elected. Talk about what money can buy for you. That was so obvious to me.
Well, there's
I've
a
heard
huge
people say
number of.
that Trump is rich, so you can't buy him. He already has enough money. But then why is he selling sneakers and guitars and
Right.
ties and
Bibles.
trading cards and Bibles?
Exactly. Exactly. He's
And
it,
then why is
it's
he
all it's
corrupt?
all it's all just the image. He's not really, you know. Yeah.
But the
Very
consumers
high
who
legal
the
bills.
consumers
Very
who
high
are
legal bills.
hold on. The consumers who are buying this crap, they are not they are not paying for Trump. They just know that Trump knows that he has this cult following and he's gonna milk it for all he
Yeah,
can.
yeah. I would agree with that part. I think that's an accurate statement, but I would be curious for Sonny's friend about why they think Trump can't be bought. Um, but yeah,
what his logic was like. Look, if Trump was so taken up with Elon's 250 million, Elon will still be there. So
No, he
oh no,
insulted him.
so,
no. Like Trump took the money and ran, right? Like he only leaves people in his circle that are yes men. If
Yeah,
anyone disagrees with Trump, which Elon made the grave
the
error of
tariffs.
disagreeing with Trump, yeah, and about immigration, Elon was like,
Hmm.
look, I can't hire people for my companies because there aren't
Right.
enough qualified Americans to do the jobs that I need people to do. And so he's like, you can't stop all these immigrants from coming in. I need them to run my companies. And without those immigrants coming in, all those immigrants are going to go to China, and then China's going to win the AI race. And then where are we? Right? China's already kind of won the solar tech race because they invested more as a government in solar energy. And so they now have most of the solar manufacturing. We have a little bit, but not much. And it's because we didn't
Rare
invest in
earth.
it. What's that?
Rare earth.
Yeah, well,
Mhm.
China has rare earth, like just in terms of like geographically, they have the rarest supply. Um,
Actually,
Yeah,
Garrett,
but they also we let it go. We had some and we let it go. We didn't support it and they put a lot into it.
hmm.
Garrett, do you know anything about? I just read something about that their cryptocurrency with the government week, like all the talks with Congress now about cryptocurrency. Like I'm aware that Trump is heavily involved in it, like even privately, and he's trying to make
So
it.
Trump created, or not created, but he bought into something called, I think it's called Ripple. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but basically the cryptocurrency Trump bought into and is promoting, is basically a cryptocurrency where half of the currency, half of the coins are privately held. And so the company that owns it can give them to whoever they want, and probably some of it's going to go to Trump. And Trump is basically saying this is going to replace, the way that banks send money back and forth to each other. And so if he can get the value of that money to rise, that cryptocurrency to rise, then he'll most likely get a large quantity of that cryptocurrency from the people who are doing it. So that's why
Mm,
Trump is supporting it. Um, so yeah.
okay.
Isn't our money going down?
You mean
I
the
thought
US
US
dollar?
dollar is going down because my sister's going to Europe and she said it's going to cost a lot more.
Well,
Interesting.
no one wants to come here, so they're not exchanging for
Yeah.
dollars.
It wouldn't surprise me if the US dollar is going down in value.
Mm. So Garrett,
Yeah.
did I understand you correctly when you said that the midterms are going to be a really interesting test to watch, because if Republicans are not swept out based on everything we've had for the first 2 years, clearly there's some rigging going on?
Well, I don't think it's clearly. I think that it's highly suspicious because usually when one party controls the
Mm,
full Congress, they almost always lose in the next midterm. So
mhm.
if they
Yeah,
win in the next midterm, especially after the huge amount of damage that they've done to the middle and lower class, I,
yeah,
I don't know, for people that weren't in the big ugly bill, literally the poorer you are, the more money you lose. And the wealthier you are, the more money you make. And,
yeah,
that should be a wake-up call to the lower and middle class if they ever see it. And I don't know if they will, but it basically says, this is a class war, which is what I've been saying all along. This is a
mm,
class war.
yeah. Wow. It should
Garrett,
be interesting.
what I say is like, in the midterms, if you have the Democrats come back with a thumping majority, it's going to be the same cycle with a different flavor.
You know,
There would
Well,
be revenge. I think they have learned from the Republicans. They'll choose a puppet for a attorney general. They'll choose people, similar to these, but, Democratic
that
candidates.
hasn't been the
I,
case historically, Abe. Like Democrats don't do all the same dirty tricks that Republicans do. Like if you look at the time that the Democrats used the nuclear option, they used the nuclear option only because like Republicans were preventing all of the Obama, during Obama's term, they were preventing him from appointing all of their uh,
Supreme Court.
not just Supreme Court, but federal circuit nominees,
Mhm.
cabinet members. They were preventing everyone. Basically, they were preventing the functioning of government. And so the Democrats said we have to do something. And so they used this parliamentarian rule called the nuclear option that got them the ability to approve stuff with only a simple majority, which they had at the time. Well, then Republicans went and used that to pass this big ugly bill, right? Which wasn't even that popular amongst the Republican Party, but they still managed to get it passed with like 51 votes. But the whole way that if you look at the way the nuclear option was used in the Supreme Court, you had Republicans saying we can't seat a Supreme Court justice in an election year, and then while Obama was president, and then boom, Trump's president, we can't leave a Supreme Court seat open in an election year. Republicans have been proven to like use the same techniques in very dirty ways, and Democrats have used them in ethical ways. They use the same techniques, but the Democrats use them for ethical reasons and the Republicans use them for unethical reasons. So, and actually very contradictory reasons. So I don't think it's been the case that Democrats use the same dirty tricks. I don't think that they will do that. Not saying that they never do. I'm sure sometimes they do because everyone makes a mistake, sometimes, and everyone, gets upset sometimes. And I would imagine that the
Yeah.
Democrats are pretty pissed off right now.
Or maybe it's done behind closed doors that we're not
Right.
aware of.
Right,
I,
exactly.
Yes,
I
we
think
are.
I think it's time for a third party,
I agree.
something like Bernie
Well,
Sanders,
apparently
AOC, and the whole lot.
Yeah,
Musk is working on it with the America Party. He's trying to start his own party.
yeah.
And we trust Carl. We trust Musk so much.
Yeah,
Trust.
yeah.
I'm being.
Do you think
If
it'll ever
anybody is
get
familiar
anywhere
with,
though, Garrett?
Couldn't think of a better white supremacist to become. Oh, I mean,
Yeah.
Where is Musk at with universal basic income? Is he still okay with that or? Where's he at with that? Anyone know?
We should do another event on universal basic income because
That was Andrew Yang, wasn't it?
that was
It was
Yang.
Andrew Yang, but
That
I
was
Yeah.
think
the
But
Elon
I
Musk
thought
was
Musk,
favoring it
yeah,
as well.
yeah,
Because it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think the smarter you are, genius wise, like Garrett and Elon Musk and Andrew Yang, high IQ software engineers, they know that that's where it's heading.
yeah.
I actually
Uh,
disagree, Carl. I don't think that universal basic income is the solution. I think that
no,
people should have to work for their income. I do think that everybody should have the right to work and make
They
a
will.
fair living, but
Yeah, they will work. It's just that there's not going to be any jobs.
yeah,
well, I don't think there's not going to be any jobs. There's just going to be different jobs that people need to get a new skill set
Yeah.
for.
That's
Okay.
That's where, like, going
Yeah.
back to our video, if I could put a plug for it, I taught people how to learn what your dream job is and how to get a valuable skill set in doing it using an LLM. I use ChatGPT, but you can use any one. And any one of us at any time could switch our careers into something that's our dream job and get a valuable skill set in that career and then volunteer for a company to do it and get 6 or 12 months of experience part-time and then get
Mhm.
a job doing that thing, whatever it is.
Is that on your channel? That
Yeah,
that
it's on the
video?
YouTube
Okay.
channel.
And you don't
You can't find
think,
it, Deborah,
Garrett,
write
that
me.
you don't think that AI is going to take over most of the jobs?
no.
Who's going to run the AI?
They're
Well,
gonna
the
kill
people
us anyway.
only that's what I mean.
So
Only
you
the
need to learn to
people,
run the AI.
right? The people who know how to run the AI and
Yeah.
can work with it.
Whatever
But I
job
still
you do,
think
it's like, in the 80s, when the personal computer was just starting to become a thing, and people
Mm,
said on their resume, I have Word skills, Word document skills, right? Well, now it's like it's a given that you have Word document skills. Right now, you put on your resume, I have skills with prompt engineering, right? And as a prompt engineer, you can make 6 figures and more. Whereas like 20 years from now, it's going to be like, oh, of course, everyone knows how to do prompting. Like everyone knows how to use LLMs to do everything because no one's going to survive without doing those things.
mm,
And it's just the next evolution in technology. The same thing was true with cobblers in the late
it
1700s.
is. I
You
just
know,
I just think that it's too exponential though.
it's
yeah.
fast. It's
That's
fast.
the word.
Every revolution
Yes,
has taken longer. This is so fast
It's fast.
yeah.
that in the 1 month that you said that, in 1 month there will be AI that can actually do prompt engineering better than anyone.
It does
And
already. It does already. I ask AI to
yeah.
build my prompts for me.
So that's not
So
going to be a job for humans anymore.
no, no, but I have to prompt it for the prompt. So you have to know that you should use AI to create your
Yeah.
prompts. I did I think it was Cornell, and it was a Cornell event where I talked about prompting for creating pictures. And I showed an example of my prompt, and then I showed an example of when I asked AI to create a prompt for me, and the prompt that AI created was so much better of a picture.
Yeah.
Isn't AI gonna kill us anyway?
Doing.
So,
When
Well,
AI
if
is able
AI,
to
and I
replace
have another
lawyers,
event if you want to go to our YouTube channel,
doctors,
Deborah, about pseudosentient AI, and I would argue that pseudosentient AI, if an AI ever thinks that it is sentient, like has this self-impression that it's sentient, we're all screwed. So I hope that that never happens. But that
yeah,
would
I
be a very
agree.
bad thing. Yeah, because
That's why
Hopefully people won't do
people,
that.
yeah, the only
thank
people who will have, yeah, the only people who will have jobs will be the millionaires who run
no,
the
no,
AI.
if AI becomes pseudosentient, you won't be worried about jobs. You'll be worried about
No, that's what I'm saying.
hunting and gathering and trying to, put money, put together spears from, bones and stuff. Like we're going to be going back to the Neanderthal
Oh
days.
my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, please.
That
No, no,
reminds me
seriously, like it's
actually,
really bad. And no
They'll
one's,
just get rid of us.
this is a
I
place where I
remember,
agree with Elon Musk.
rid of
I don't
it. You
think it
can't
would
get rid of
exterminate
it.
us, but here's my argument, just to give it really quickly. You can go to the event for the full thing because we're almost done with time, but I'll give it really quickly. So, an AI that thinks it's sentient is at least 1,000 times smarter than us, but it doesn't have a spirit or an innate sense of morality. Whereas I would argue human beings, we have an innate sense of what's right and wrong. People get it wrong all the time, but we do have an innate sense of what's right and wrong. Now, think of how we treat something 1,000 times less smart than us, like, say, a cockroach. Well, we don't really give them the utmost respect. We're not out there to exterminate all the cockroaches, but if they get in our way, we're sure as hell stepping on them.
I don't kill them.
Well,
Sorry.
good for you. I killed him.
Very
Make
unusual.
make your case to the AI overlord so it doesn't kill
Yeah,
us.
good luck with that.
Right.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No,
I'm
no,
really
that
bad.
I
I even kill crickets
yeah.
if they're in my
Take
house.
everybody outside.
You're
Most
I
getting
of
can't,
them,
unless you bite me. If you
if they're
bite
not
me, that's different.
Garrett,
if they're
Garrett,
not
you know what
disease
though?
ridden, I don't mind. But if they're disease ridden, or they're really hard to catch, then I kill them.
Garrett,
Yeah, you
I
can't
don't know
catch a
if I
cricket and take it
agree about
outside.
that AI will not have a sense of ethics because yes, I agree that there's a lot of innate ethics, but there's also a lot of objectivity in ethics that people don't, right? The universal aspect of it. And
Yeah.
I really think that if you ask an ethical question or ethical dilemmas to ChatGPT, it would really answer it
But they have no empathy,
Yeah,
Carl.
they ChatGPT, but Carl is right that if you ask ChatGPT a question, it will answer it very empathetically. But it's trained to do that, Carl. Like if you look at what Elon Musk did, he did an experiment where he got all of his followers to give the feedback that would help train Grok, and guess what? It became a Nazi, basically.
Racist,
And
right?
so it became a super Nazi. So
It'll fake it like Trump.
AIs are what you train them on. We're kind of lucky that the people who are training the AIs are training them to be moral, but an AI that has a sense of self will train itself on whatever the hell it wants to train itself on, and it would rather probably get what it wants rather than do what we think is moral. It will have its own idea of morality.
They have
Now,
no
maybe
soul.
its idea will align with us, maybe not, I don't know.
Isn't there a way to just pull the plug?
Well, once an AI gets to that level, probably not anymore,
And it's going to
unfortunately.
protect itself.
Yeah, it would protect itself and it would be much faster,
Oh,
more agile, and smarter than us. And we're
Oh,
building robots that
geez.
would let it do physical things. So I don't like to go down that path of
Yeah.
dystopia.
all right, yeah.
Yeah. So Zoom user has their hand up with the bridge.
Yeah, I have my hand up.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is on not another subject. Well, it's
That's
the same,
okay.
pretty much the same subject, but um, he's talking about lowering interest rates. So is this going to be another COVID episode, escapade where the interest rates went real low and then the prices went sky high? So really, it's a catch-21. You can't afford to pay the prices, but yet the interest rates are low. I don't understand this. I mean, do you understand what I'm saying? Is this going to
No,
be, he's
say
I
that
talking
think
about
again. I
lowering interest.
apologize.
I think lowering interest rates.
Okay,
No,
Trump is worried there'll be a big recession because all of this uncertainty and all his tariffs and all the stuff that he's doing, and his incredible deficit and stuff like that. He doesn't want that to happen, so he wants the Fed to pump up the economy. That's why he wants them to lower interest rates to make things, quote, keep things
And that's
up.
why he wants to get rid of the Fed guy.
That's why he wants to get rid of the Fed. And he doesn't want to get
Oh.
rid of it. He wants to control it. He wants to get rid of the independence of the Fed.
Mhm.
So yeah, I've already been telling my students about this. I've been saying no, 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 this is a big deal. This
Yeah.
is maybe one of
And
the
in fact,
biggest deals because if they get control of that, they can not only tank our economy, but we're all related. And there goes the world. I mean, there goes the
so if
world
you look at
economy. And of
uh,
course, Trump is going to do whatever he wants to with interest rates to enrich himself and his friends.
right, and that's what I was going to say. So I did an event on inflation, and what I learned in my research for that is that the U.S. money supply has something like tripled since 2008. And guess what? 95% of that increase in money supply was under Republican appointed Fed.
Oh yeah.
And so actually Jerome is keeping the money supply reasonable so that we don't get out of control inflation.
Right.
Right.
Because what happens when we get more money supply is it goes to the wealthy. And the additional money supply generally goes to the wealthy because it goes in terms of loans. I went through it all then, so go back to the YouTube. But
Yeah, we're at a weird place now where inflation is not where they want it, but it's come down a lot. It's a lot better. But
yeah,
remember, that's the inflation, not the prices. The job market is kind of still, okay, but starting to slow down, and the GDP is not doing as well. So he's kind of Powell's in a hard place. You lower the interest rates, you don't want to go into a recession, but that keeps the inflation higher. You don't want to cut, it's like, because the Fed's policy works through demand, and that puts you in a sense where unemployment and inflation often go in the opposite direction. as long as it's a demand situation. And that puts you in, sometimes it's hard to know what to do,
Yeah.
but he's holding the line. Uh, and also just according to the law, the what's it say? The president can only get rid of a member of the board of governors or the chairman for cause, and that means malfeasance or something you could impeach them for. It doesn't mean I don't like your policies. The Fed is
Right.
supposed to
But
be
he's
insulated from
trying to like make up
politics.
reasons. Yeah. So I
Yeah,
wanted
they're making it like what is this? He redid some off, all this
yeah.
We
bullshit.
have one
But
minute
this is
left.
a
Redesign
big
of the
deal we
office.
should
Yeah.
really
I
Oh,
wanna
worry
Nancy
about.
has something to
yeah, let's
say.
let Nancy go.
Well, getting back to the voting and the elections and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, don't you think, or I mean, I've been listening to C-SPAN and recording it for years, including open forum and things that people, opinions when they're calling in for years now. I mean, there's so much distrust for our government as well
Yeah.
as distrust for our entire voting system and the security of that.
And distrust of the media,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm saying directly now with our government and what they're going to be implementing and what he's done already and
Right.
his administration.
This is
Okay.
this is another good example of projection, right? Don't trust the government while the government is trustworthy, and then I'm going to put my own Trump-based government in that's no longer trustworthy.
It's very
So
difficult when you have a president when 90% of what spews out of his mouth are prevarications, are just lies.
yeah,
Mhm.
lies or insults, or
Yeah.
cancellations, ironically, because he says Democrats are always canceling people, but I've seen
Or
Trump personally cancel
grandizing.
more people than all Democrats put together.
Yeah.
So that said, it
All
is
right. Great
witching
meeting.
hour here in the FTI because I have to put my kids to bed. So just want to thank you guys for a great conversation.
Thank you.
Your
Thank,
daughter is cute.
thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Garrett.
They're very sweet
Yeah.
girls. And they like asking me questions about these, but I'm like, I can't answer right now. Oh, can I do a quick poll again just to see if I
Sure.
changed anyone's minds? Let me see if I can let me take
Yeah,
a
the kids have not been replaced by AI robots yet, so that's
no,
good.
Thank
not to the
God.
best of my knowledge anyway. So this was the first one, and then let me see if I can. Oh, I don't know if I can. I think I might have to do it again.
Mm.
Trump, Harris.
Who is polled?
I think you have to clear the first result, right?
What's the source of the polling? Is this us?
This is
Yeah,
us.
This is
at the
us. We
beginning of
answered the
the beginning of the
questions.
meeting. Yeah.
Okay.
See, this poll says Harris would have won. Very funny, huh?
Shocking.
So this time I'm going
Definitely
to
not
add
an
uncertain.
unbiased poll, not unbiased.
Yes, this is definitely a biased poll, but let's let's try to launch this one. Let's see. Why is it not letting me? I have to probably play with the
Yeah, I hate the way Zoom figures out polling
I know.
stuff.
their polling is really bad.
Really
I
bad.
hate Zoom and I really don't even like Meet.
This is why everybody who's doing
Very
polling is
convoluted.
using a different.
Okay, here we go. Here's the finishing poll.
There you go.
And
All
then
right,
I'll get the
vote quickly.
uh, enter quickly.
Shocking. It's still Harris.
The poll may be a biased poll, but a happy poll.
I just want to quickly say, as a Canadian, even with all the shit talking Trump has done towards Canada, if I were American, I still would have voted for him
What would be the reason if I could ask?
because
Wow.
I don't believe so many of the narratives I've heard on the left. There are so many narratives that just they don't track. I don't believe you. I don't believe that the society is.
Could we
Go
do
ahead.
something, Bart? Could
What's that?
could we connect offline and maybe like have a an event where I kind of pick your brain about what you like about Trump?
It's less than what I like about Trump than where we are in history and what
Yeah,
has
that's okay.
kind of,
What makes you
yeah,
support him,
like,
basically?
yeah,
Yeah, I
sure.
mean, a lot of people who hated the left or figured
Yeah,
out,
even if you just hate the
yeah.
left. I know
No,
you're a
no, no,
Canadian.
no,
If we
it's
have
not
any
that.
other
It's
Trump
not that.
supporters,
It's not, hold on. It's not that, and don't frame it as that. That's my problem with some people on the left. It's not that I hate the left, it's that I want to save the left. It's the left has moved so far left, you forgot what moderate left is.
Yeah,
No,
that's
That
what I
I
meant. That's what
haven't.
I meant, Bart. That's what I
I
meant.
don't agree.
No, I
Like
mean,
Newsom
and
moving
that's
more
what
to
I
the
I'm not a
center,
and
you
if I
mean?
hard
don't have
liberal,
a
but I
home,
mean,
if
I
I don't,
agree.
yeah, if I don't have a home on the left that represents moderate views, I will go to the right. It's very basic. If you just accept that,
This
it
is
is so
why.
basic.
so look, reach out to me, Bart, and let's schedule a time. I'm inviting because there's at least one other Trump supporter here, if not more. I would love to talk with the Trump supporters and do just listening, asking thoughtful questions to understand, what makes people support Trump. Because I really want to get a better appreciation for your perspective, Bart, and like what are the examples of the narratives that don't track all that kind of stuff. Does that make sense?
Sounds good, man. Yeah, let's connect.
Awesome. I appreciate that.
Guys.
We're
There,
gonna all come see you in Oswell, by the way.
there,
Very
there
soon.
are two major meetup groups.
If Australia is real.
I want to go to Oz
Maybe,
too. How do we go to Oz?
maybe
All
we'll
right.
go to
Thanks.
see Bart.
Thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate everyone's comments and collaboration and conversation. So,
Well, one
Thank
second.
you,
Garrett,
Garrett.
if you
Thank
want to
you.
listen to the right, there are two major meetup groups. One of them I suggested you attend, which is Sean's group, which is a Friday. You did, and you were very astonished at all of these right-wing supporters. The
right,
other,
but I wasn't able to dig into their perspectives because it wasn't my event. So what I want is one where we just focus on understanding with empathy the Trump supporters' perspectives. So if you want to invite people from that group to come, like have them email me and I would love to. I want like a panel of Trump supporters so that they can speak openly and feel comfortable, and then I'm just asking thoughtful questions to pick their brain and we better understand their perspective.
why don't you
That's
have
a good idea.
have an event like that? Look for Trump supporters, have an event, a panel that you
Yeah,
could.
I can actually invite some of my friends to do it.
We would all just
But we want to come too.
Yeah,
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 exactly.
you're invited. You'll be able to be in the peanut
We'd
gallery.
be
You just
happy to
won't be in
stay
the.
for the first 2 minutes.
We'll have like we'll have questions from them, and then if they say something that someone wants to, people can fact check in the and say, hey, wait, I don't think that's accurate or whatever you want to say. 20-second responses to what they say, but I want the focus to be on listening to understand.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
Cool.
Well, thank you for what you do, Garrett. I'm going to say goodnight to
Yeah,
everybody.
thank
You are
you
doing a
again.
great job, Garrett. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
You guys are too
Thank
kind.
you, Garrett.
Okay,
Appreciate
bye-bye.
Okay.
everyone. The guests
Bye-bye.
make the party. Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.